I never had the intention of going into television at all. I mean, during the war, I was in the Air Force. And when I came out of the Air Force, a whole group of us got together and said, we'll form a repertory company down on the Isle of Wight, strange enough, where I live now. And we did, we fit up rep. We played one-night stands all the way around the island. And then my agent sent me up to ATV because they were looking for an announcer to fill in while the ordinary announcers took their holidays. Because they had a fortnight's holiday each, they wanted an announcer for 6 weeks. And she said, go up. I said, what, an announcer? What does an announcer do? And she said, oh, it's dead easy. You just sit there and you just talk to a camera, that's all. And you fill in the bits that need filling in, because in those days, everything's live. So there were gaps in production whereby you had to fill it in. So I said, well, it's only for 6 weeks, because after all, I'm a thespian, really. You know, I don't muck about with this terrible commercial television, ridiculous. And I went up there and I auditioned for it. And the one thing that struck me, I looked at the TV Times, and the name Val Parnell seemed to crop up quite a bit. So I thought, Val Parnell obviously has got a great deal of influence here. So when I spoke directly to a camera, and I'll use this one if I may, to speak directly to a camera, I sat there with my TV Times, and I said, well, tonight, of course, you can see Val Parnell's Saturday show. And then tomorrow, of course, we've got Val Parnell's Sunday Night, the one that played him. Every program I spoke of with Val Parnell's name in it, I hit Val Parnell. And after they'd done all the auditions, I suppose there might have been about 20 people there for the auditions. And they went and saw Val Parnell, you see, and said, well, what do you think? Because he'd been watching it on a monitor. And he said, well, I thought that chap with glasses seemed to have it, you know, seemed to have the right idea. So, and this was it. They said, well, offered me the job. And it was only 6 weeks. And all my friends said, but you're a thespian. You know, what are you doing mucking about with television? I said, listen, 6 weeks is good in anybody's business. So 6 weeks I took. And the funny thing was, at the audition, I met with a lovely lady whom I've remained friends with ever since. She was auditioning to become the Midlands announcer. And I was auditioning to become the London announcer with visits to the Midlands. And that lady's name was Jeannie Morton, the lovely Jeannie Morton. And she was an actress before she became an announcer. So we had a lot in common. And we started having from the word go, we started having lots of laughs together, you know. So anyway, she got the job permanently to be the Midlands announcer. And I went to fill in for 6 weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, by pure chance this was, one of the announcers, Dick, I can't remember his other name now, he decided he would leave and go into radio. And so they said to me, would you like to be a permanent announcer with ATV? I said, oh, I don't know. They said, it's $1,500 a year. I said, what? And a month's paid holiday. $1,500 and a month's paid holiday. Bingo, I was in. Because it was very close. My son had just been born. And so had a baby, and et cetera, and $1,500 a year wasn't chicken feed in those days. I'm going back now, 1957 this was. So $1,500 was well worth having. So that was it. My days as a thespian, RADA trained, always waiting for a job, went right by the board, and I took to announcing. And it was fun, I must say, I enjoyed it. I think the whole thing about being an announcer was, it was the face of the station. And this was terribly important, because let's face it, television really is home movies. And home movies aren't much fun unless Uncle George is there to say, well, this is when we went to so-and-so, and this is, and television hasn't really changed all that much. I mean, it is still home movies. And the announcer was the personality that the people attached to the station. There were three of us. There was Peter Coburn, Arthur Adair, and myself. And we took it in turns to come up to Birmingham, because ATV in those days had weekends in London and Monday to Friday in Birmingham. So we switched. We came up to Birmingham. These are the old days of Aston Studios, which was that really was great fun. At the time I must tell you this one. I got caught out as an announcer. Talk about filling things. On a Sunday, there were two programs. One was Chinland's Cook and the Last of the Mohicans, and the other one was a cowboy thing. I forgot what it was. I don't know, whatever cowboy thing. So we were given, they packaged it in a sort of rather nice little hour's program, half an hour this, half an hour that, and I'm going to link in between. And I had a bright idea. I thought, I know, we'll run Chingachgook and I will show a Sitting Bull headdress and explain what the feathers mean in an Indian chief's headdress. And that'd be make a nice little hour's program, that will. So anyway, the wardrobe got me a headdress, and I did this and said, oh, this feather means Battle of so-and-so, and this is the Apache something or other, all the story of it. And then while Chingachgook was running, I timed it so that I'd have 20 seconds at the end to appear wearing the headdress. Because my father always said that my great-great-grandmother was a Red Indian. Whether it was true or not, I don't know. I've got a touch of it somewhere, but whatever it is. But anyway, so I did this beautiful makeup, redskin makeup, and the headdress. And the idea was I was going to come back at the very end for 20 seconds and say, Sitting Bull, hope you enjoy programs. You come next week, Chingachgook will be here again. Until then, how? What a lovely little out it was. And the guy in transmission control, Mike Lewin, mistimed it. And suddenly, just before they said, coming to you in 10 seconds, Shaw, and the floor manager said, Mike says you're underrunning 1 minute 20. I said, one minute 20, 5, 4, 3, boom. How? 1 minute 20 seconds, standing there like a Red Indian with all the stuff on. And I started off with such a load of codswallop. I started off, one time, red man fight white man. No longer red man fight white man. No more war between white man, red man. Now they sit in circle, smoke pipe of peace, take one puff and pass pipe of peace to next man. He take puff. And I'm looking, and there's a clock under the camera, and this clock was creeping around. And I still was down to about 30 seconds to go. I thought, what am I do now? And I suddenly remembered road safety. You're always, if you're doing children's programs, you could always cross the road safely. Remember, when Papoose, he come to river, he look right for crocodile. He look left for crocodile. He see no crocodile, he swim. He see crocodile, he not swim. He wait for squaw. Squaw, she will tell him when it's safe to swim. Don't forget, Chingachgook will be here next week. Until then, how? How did you manage to bugger that up? It was absolutely, I mean, you wouldn't believe it, would you? And John Terry had a presentation, rang up, he said, that was a nice piece. He said, that was a very interesting piece, actually. I said, I enjoyed that. He said, I thought you stretched it out a bit. I said, stretched it out a bit. When I did programs up here, I meant the trouble was to get out of announcing somehow. Because otherwise you got stuck, you got labelled, like most things in life. You know, Shaw Taylor is an announcer. So therefore somebody making a program wouldn't think of, oh, are you sure on this, et cetera, et cetera. So I tried to break the mold of just being an announcer and doing other things. And I found out I went to ATV and I said, I'm not earning enough money. You know, I've got a wife, a child, and I really do. I've got to bump my salary up somewhere. Is there anything else I can do? And they suddenly said, well, yeah, they gave me a quiz show and things like that. So I started doing quiz shows. And I used to come up especially to Birmingham for those. Usually on a Tuesday they went out 7 o'clock. And I would get the train up, the lunchtime train, in those days Pullman trains, you know, where you could have lunch on the train coming up here and dinner on the way back. I mean, this really was luxury living. Turns dots into pictures and pictures into pounds. I remember I got a couple on the program who were absolutely thick as planks, both of them. And I had a word with them before, because it's all live, you know, 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night. And I said, no, don't go for the hard, don't go for 10-dot questions. Go for the simple 5 dots, because I could see problems coming up. Because it's a live half hour with millions of people watching. And they said, oh yeah, all right. So, and they started to get, everyone got their question wrong. 5-dot question, no, that's not right. And then the dots join up on your opponent's picture. So you see, if you get the question wrong, so the 5 dots join up on your opponent's picture. So in fact, what was happening, they were scoring for each other. I mean, not intentionally, just by chance. And I got the, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get out of this. Anyway, it was a picture, it was Winston Churchill. And they got right up to nearly 50 dots joined up. And it was £5 a dot. And if this is what you would win if you had the number of dots that weren't connected. And even the audience were saying, Churchill. I said, please, do not interrupt, don't put them off. So eventually we got to 45 dots joined up. And I said, and you could see it was, you've got the hat, the cigar, everything. And so I said to the girl, I said, would you like to go and write down on the dotograph who you think it might be? And she wrote down Churchill. I thought, good. Now, sir, well, who do you think it might be? And he said, could it be Churchill? So I said, yes. Now we'll go on to double dotto. As you've both got it right, we'll go on to double dotto, which is £10 an unconnected dot. So we start off, and the slides go down, completely blank slides there, and she presses the buzzer. And I said, I thought, this is all I need. I said, excuse me, love, I said, you're leaning on the buzzer. Yes, she said. I said, what do you mean, yes? You mean, you know who it is? Yes, she said. So I said, go down to the dotograph, write down who you think it is. And she misspelt it, but she wrote down Archbishop Macarius. Completely misspelt, and it was right. And she walked away with 500 quid. I mean, she was knocked out, the next guy knocked her out completely. But I'll never forget that. I mean, you go through half an hour of that, and but that was the fun of quizzes. Oh, and the other lovely quiz, which I adored, was pencil and paper. That was a smashing quiz. That was so simple. It was the perfect family viewing. It was simply a lovely lady called Gwyneth Tye and myself sitting side by side on a settee, and we asked 20 general knowledge questions before the commercial break. And then in the second half, we asked 10 IQ questions. Dear old John Irwin, who was the, I tell this story, I mean, because you don't have to use it because it is slightly indecent. But yes, you don't have to use it. But Gwyneth, very, 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 very pretty lady, blonde. And John always liked to try and get an animal into it somewhere. And one week he got Dudley Zoo to send us an orangutan. And this thing came in the studio. I don't know if you've ever seen an orangutan. They are the ugliest type of monkey you can possibly think of. And John said, Gwyneth, would you mind if we sat it on your lap? And she said, no, not at all. So in rehearsal, it was absolutely fine. Rehearsing in the afternoon, the keeper came with his arms like this, and the orangutan was hanging onto him like a branch from a tree. And he just swung the orangutan, plonked it on her lap. I sat there, quietly scratching. And when I said, now, I know that I have got a monkey on my lap, but can you tell me what sort of monkey is it? Write down your answer, right? Keeper, cut to me, keeper came in the other side, orang took it and whipped it out. Perfect rehearsal, no problem whatsoever. And on the night, live, he swings the orangutan, plonks it onto her lap. And I say, now, what question have you got, Gwyneth? She said, well, I know I've got a monkey on my lap, and this thing went. Look round at her. And there, as far as he was concerned, was the prettiest lady orangutan he'd ever seen. And he swung round, grabbed her round the back of the settee, was going, I'm sitting there with tears rolling down my face. Gwyneth's going, oh dear. The keeper came in and started hitting it with a newspaper, with a rolled up newspaper. And of course, that got it going even more. And he's whacking this bloody orangutan. And eventually he got it in an arm lock. He got his arm around it and he hauled it off. And Gwyneth is going, oh. oh dear, what sort of monkey was it?
This is all live.
This is all live on air. And in the corner of the studio, we could hear this thing. Honestly, it was the most beautiful thing. But I mean, they were moments like that in quiz shows. They were good fun quiz shows. I put it down to, in my case, one particular producer called Lew Grade, he was an outside broadcaster, he was head of outside broadcast for ATV. And he really was a good producer. And he and I got on like a house on fire. So if ever he had a job which he didn't know who to get for it, he said, oh no, I'll give Sean a call. You know, he'll do it. Because, I mean, all I could bring to it was the fact that I was not expert in that particular field, but I was used to speaking to a camera and could keep the show running if anything bent in the... And we formed a very good partnership. It was he who suddenly decided what the Royal Command performances, because you see, commercial television had a slight problem with Royal Command performances. You are not allowed to show religion or royalty with a minute and a half of a commercial break. These were the rules in those days by the IBA. So therefore, when the BBC did a Royal Command performance, no problem. The Queen could roll up, in she would go, performance could start, no problem at all. But when ITV did it, you had to have a minute and a half before the Queen could arrive. And the show couldn't go on until the Queen was there. So Steve said, I know, get Shaw. So Shaw got a job for you. So I would stand there, all done up in my dicky bow, etc., and say, well, here we are, the credits would roll, here we are at Drury Lane Theatre, ready for the Royal Command performance. We're just waiting for the Queen to arrive now. I've had word that the royal car has left the palace, so we shouldn't be more than a minute or two. Meanwhile, just look around this beautiful... And I would then do the history of Drury Lane, etc., and then suddenly, Her Royal Highness has just, or Her Majesty, I beg her pardon. Her Majesty has just arrived. And out the Queen would come, and England would come again. My mother had a firm conviction the Queen wouldn't go without me. She, of course, you know, all the neighbours in Hackney, no. She always has to have Shaw there first. As long as Shaw's doing it, then she'd agree to go. But otherwise, it's rather sweet, really, isn't it? But Steve and I, we got it. And I mean, he rang out one day and he said, it's 1961 we're talking about. 1961, and the Iron Curtain had moved just very slightly, not much, but very slightly, and the Russians were starting to be keen to make friends. They also didn't have a thing called videotape, and we did. So the Russians said, would you like to come to Moscow and make a program and bring your videotape machine with you? And ATV said, oh yes, we would like to do that. And it was the opening of the British Trade Fair in Sokolniki Park, one of the first of the trade fairs that they ran from behind the Iron Curtain. And so I went, so Steve rang me up and he said, no, we're going to take Reggie Bosanquet to do an interview with Khrushchev, to do the serious stuff, he said. And we want somebody to go around chatting to Moscow housewives, saying, you know, what's it like, what's the price of tea, how much you pay for Daz and that sort of thing. He said, I thought you'd be absolutely ideal for this. So Reggie Bosanquet and I went together, ostensibly. The only problem was we flew out on a TU-104, which in 61, I promise you, you know, the wings practically flapped to get it across. And all the stuff that drops out, if there's something goes wrong, all the breathing stuff is hanging on the back of the seat in front of you. So there's no problem there. If anything, and nothing did go wrong. The only thing went wrong was when we landed in Moscow and Reggie Bosanquet had lost the piece of paper that said he was staying in the Hotel Ukraina, as we all were. And Moscow in 61, if you had all the right documents, you had no problems at all. Yeah, you've run a piece of paper, yeah, okay. Reggie hadn't got the piece of paper. And I said, he's with me. Yet, And yet, you know, they wouldn't take it. So eventually, this rather big Russian with a rather large revolver around his waist came up, "Come with me." And we lost Reggie. We lost Reggie for 4 days. They put him in a farmer's commune while they found out who he was. But the day of we made a, which must still exist somewhere, a documentary we made on film. We filmed 16mm. We filmed a documentary while we were there, working with Russian television. They wouldn't let us take a television crew. They said, no, you can bring presenter and producer. So Bill Ward and Steve Wade were the 2 producers. Reggie Bosanquet and myself were the 2 presenters. And we were going around the exhibition at Sokolniki Park, and there was a great crowd had gathered, and and they gave us 1 microphone between us on a lead. Can you imagine? No such thing as a radio mic in '61. And so we had to drag this lead, and we had to keep meeting up, and I'd say to Reggie, you know, "Do you want the microphone?" He would take the microphone. There was a sort of rough and readiness about it. And so anyway, I saw this crowd, and I had the mic. And I said to Ludmila, who was my interpreter, I said, "Oh, what do you suppose the crowd is, Ludmila?" "Oh, that would be Mr. Khrushchev." Now, he'd said he wasn't coming to the exhibition. She said, "Oh, that must be Mr. Khrushchev." I said, "Do you think he would speak with us?" "Why would he not?" she said. I said, "Well, come on, let's go for it." We started to push through the crowd and forcing our way with a microphone lead, pushing through the crowd to get through. And suddenly a voice from Birmingham, from way up on the gallery somewhere, said, "What's the problem, monsieur?" And I said, "We're just trying to get through. All this is live. This is a live broadcast from Moscow." And I said, "We're trying to get through to Mr. Khrushchev." "Oh, we'll do that." They swung down from the gantries where they'd been working. They were the guys who'd set up all the exhibition workers. And they formed a phalanx. And this Birmingham phalanx went right the way through the crowd with me behind, with Ludmila. And boom, suddenly there's this little fat man, Mr. Khrushchev. And I said, "Mr. Khrushchev, I'm from British television. I'm working with Russian television here in Moscow at the moment. And we are live at this very moment to Britain, and you are being seen by millions of viewers all over the country. Is there anything?" And he gazed at me, and I'm sure he understood every word I said, but then waited for Ludmila to interpret for him. And off he went. And I said, "What are you saying?" And it was all sort of hands across. Because Gagarin had just gone up that year, first man into space, you know. So he was all very. This is really why the Russians were very proud of themselves at that time. And so I said, "Oh, da da da," and it was very much a hands across the, you know, our 2 countries must get together more. We must, etc., etc. And I thought he'd finished, and I said, "Well, Mr. Khrushchev, thank you very much indeed." And we were just about to move away, and he started up again. And I thought, something really good here. If he's just suddenly thought of something, we might even get a conversation going. So I went back. I said, you were going to say something, Mr. Khrushchev." "Yeah, he went on. And I turned to Ludmila, and she said, "Mr. Khrushchev said he has just been admiring the washing machines on the stand over there, and what brilliant washing machines you make. Would it be possible to get Mr. Mikoyan's underwear off him and put it in the washing machine, because it hasn't been washed for 3 months?" I said, "Well, Mr. Khrushchev, you know, this is it." I mean, it's my scoop. My scoop. I interviewed Mr. Khrushchev, and of course Reggie, who'd been sent, never got an interview with him ever. And when we forced our way out of that, and it was an incredible end to a program, couldn't have been better. I forced my way out of the crowd into the daylight, and there was Reggie saying, I said, "Oh, hello, Reggie, there we are. Do you want the microphone? I've just been interviewing Mr. Khrushchev." He said, "You what?" Well, we have to say goodbye now from Sokolniki Park. I hope you've enjoyed the program, and learned a little about it, glaring at me. And at that moment, the band of the Scotch Guards came round the corner, playing Scotland the Brave. And we went up, the credits rolling over it. They suddenly decided they would cover 10-pin bowling, of all things. And once again, you know, Steve Wade rang up and said, "Oh, you're doing commentary on 10-pin bowling." "Doing what?" "Commentary on 10-pin bowling this week." He said, that's all right. And what we did, actually it worked very well. It was quite clever, this, because what they would do is get an expert on the game, and so you'd have an expert on the game linked with somebody who knew how to keep a program running. And so you put the two together and you've got the best of both worlds. And I mean, now, of course, you tend to get the experts who can also commentate. But in those days, doing live commentaries it wasn't difficult exactly, but it covered. I did ice skating. I was the network ice skating commentator. That was because I'd been in ice shows when I was an actor. And somebody said, who do we get to do ice skating commentaries? Shaw was in ice shows. In fact, I was an actor putting the voices on the characters. I wasn't skating at all. But again, they teamed me up with Malcolm Cannon, who was a champion, British champion skater. And it worked very well. Lew Grade, character and a half, he really was. Great character. He was a very fair, a very kind, a surprisingly kind man. I mean, everybody thought he was a tough businessman, etc., etc. But he was an extremely kind man. I mean, I know on one particular program, which obviously I wouldn't name because of what I'm going to say, but which they made abroad down in Spain, and he. The guy who was in charge of getting all the equipment down, etc., made a right ricket of it. And they were missing cameras and they were missing things that should have been there, still stuck with the customs people, etc., etc. And so when the director got back, he said, he's out. He said, he's got to go. And Lew said, well, he said, you know, he's got a wife and 4 children. 2 of them are at school, etc., etc. And Lew knew all about his family. He said, don't push him out. He said, just push him somewhere where he can do a good job without causing too much trouble. Now that's pretty good, isn't that, for a boss man? But I one year they had this lovely thing. They had a great dinner, I think, in the Dorchester Hotel down in London. For all ATV, Midlands as well as down south, had this big dinner for the staff, and they asked Lew, would he be guest of honour? And so he said yes, he would. Oh no, he couldn't. Sorry. Oh gee, no. I've got to go to America. I've got to go to America. No, I can't possibly. So they thought, now who can they ask next? Now it's very difficult in an organisation because once you get past the top man, you usually get 2 people. Which one do you ask? One is going to be offended, whichever one you ask. So somebody said, I know what, get Shaw. Nobody will object to him. So my wife and I were invited to this great dinner as guests of honour. And about a fortnight before, they said, they got on to me and they said, we've got a problem. I said, what's the problem? And they said, well, Lew's had his trip cancelled and he can make it. That's why I said, well, no problem at all, you know, just scrub me out. We can't, we've had the programmes printed. So I've got a beautiful photograph of Lew Grade and myself at the head table in this great dinner for the ATV staff. And of course, after the dinner, Lew said to me, have a cigar. And although I could smoke, these cigars, I mean, they're this long, and this bloody cigar went on for hours. I can't say I enjoyed the dinner because I spent most of it puffing on Lew Grade's cigar. No, he's a good man, Lew, but and make instant decisions. If he thought it was a good idea, I always remember talking to the guy who wrote Mrs. Thursday. Pick a name out of that. Who am I thinking of? Ted Willis. Ted Willis wrote The Blue Lamp as well. And Ted Willis said, if ever you had an idea, always get in by 8 o'clock in the morning and get straight in to see Lew, because Lew is always there at 8 o'clock. And he said, I went in, and he said, I told him about this idea, about this Cockney lady who gets involved in big business and suddenly find the Cockney lady has got more common sense than half the board of the directors, etc., etc. And he said, Lew was sitting there puffing away, said, doesn't sound bad, Ted, doesn't sound bad. What's her name? And Ted hadn't even thought about it. And he said, and he looked up, and the clock had the day on it as well. And it said Thursday. He said, Mrs. Thursday. I like it, so he says, we'll do it. You know, and he would do shows like that. Sometimes he came unstuck. He came terribly unstuck with the Americans because he did a deal with them. Again, I was one of the compares. I was the announcer for the show, and that was the Jack Parr show, I think it was. It went out in the States as Kraft Music Hall, and I was doing the announcement. And now we have the Kraft Music Hall. And eventually, one of these Americans came down. And he said, "Excuse me, sir," he said, "but we don't understand what you're calling the product." I said, "Well, Kraft." Kraft, he said. He said, we don't say that. He said, we call it craft. I said, oh, well, would you like me to change it to craft? He said, no. He said, what I really want, he said, I don't want, it sounds like you come from Boston if you do that. He said, what I want, he said, I want it to sound like craft, but you're saying craft. I said, yeah, all right. So I thought, how the hell do I do this? So eventually, I wrote down CRAFFED. I said, and now it's time for the Kraft musical. That's great. That's just what we're looking for. But Lew did a deal with them whereby he would provide all the equipment and all the people to make the program. You know, he would do that side over here in the studios up at Elstree, and they will provide the artists, top artists for the Jack Parr show, and they were top artists. But the only trouble was that the Americans had no idea of union regulations, and there was a PA there whom they did one show as I think it was something to do with an ice show at the time, and they kept going over the 12-hour break, you know, because you had to, in those days when unions had some power, before my lovely Mrs. Thatcher kicked them out of the window. However, that's neither here nor there. It's not a political discussion. But when the unions had a degree of power, you had to have these eight-hour breaks that you mustn't go into. And she went in and she finished up with over £3,000 overtime. So Lew was very good at business, doing a deal, but sometimes he did come unstuck. But he's a great guy to work for. I was very fond of him. I always remember bumped him into the corridor. It was the first year when we'd made, I think, ATV had made £3 million, I think it was. Then the following year, they made $5 million. The following year, I think it went down again to about 4 million. And I bumped Lew in the corridor and I said, hey, good news, Lew. And he said, what's good news? I said, well, we've made 4 million this year. He said, you mean we lost $1 million? I said, how'd you make that? He said, well, we had 5. so his arithmetic was quite interesting. I tried to flog the idea of Crime Watch to Channel 4 when Channel 4 first started, because I was doing Police 5. When Police 5 started up here, Lew put a thing on it saying that he wouldn't put a copyright on it at all. Anybody who wanted to use the idea, fine. So all the various regions started their own. Down in Southern started their own, and Anglia started their own. Granada started their own program, and I suddenly saw what a good idea to put it all together into one program, a month, a week, or whatever, whereby you had a central Police 5 and you took in reports from all around the country. And I thought, this is a good idea. And the guy when he started Channel 4, what was his name? Oh. Jeremy Isaacs, yeah. I was down at MIP and I suggested this to Jeremy. He said, that's a good idea. He said, have a word with, and he gave me the name of who was the commissioning editor. Nice lady, but when I went to her with the idea, she said, oh, I don't know, sure. She said, are people that interested in crime? She said, in any case, she said, you know, a crime committed up in Glasgow is not going to mean anything to somebody down in London. I said, Do you read the papers, darling? But anyway, it didn't get off the ground. And then, of course, the funny thing was it was copied all over the world. The Americans read about it in their magazine, in Variety, and sent a team of detectives over to see it. And they came and saw Police 5. They said, oh, that's a good idea, we'll start this. And they started, called it Crime Busters. Then they started another one called Crime Stoppers, which I recopied. And it spread all the way around the world. And the Germans came over and they said, yeah, das is a good idea. But 5 Minuten? Oh, 50 Minuten, yeah. And they started a program called Dossier XY with Edward Zimmermann. And Peter Schaefer, BBC producer, was on holiday in Germany. And he saw Dossier XY, came back, Crime Watch. So it went the full circle. But the lovely one was the editor of Dossier XY. He came over and said, I would like to come and see a Police 5 program. So I said, no problem at all. And we went up, he joined me in the police car, and we went up to studios. I was doing it at ITN then. And we went up to the studios, and I had a liaison civilian officer, and who only stands 5 foot nothing. And this guy leaned to me in the back of the queue car and he said, he is your bodyguard, yeah? I said, mine, what? He said, your bodyguard. He would be, what you call it over here, tooled up. I said, Jeff? Oh, Jesus, no. Anyway, he came, he saw us make the program. And on the way back, he was very serious. He said, you don't get threats? I said, no. Oh, he said, that's very different for Edward Zimmermann. He had 24-hour protection. He is on the hit list. I said, well, I'm not on any hit list, no. He said, but you are very different from Edward Zimmermann. I said, how? He said, you smiled. I said, well, tell Edward Zimmermann to smile a little more, maybe he won't be on the hit list. In fact, the villains loved Police 5. They looked upon it as their program. Oh yeah, I had one little guy came rushing up to me and he said, hello, Sean. I said, how are you? This was down in London. Rushed across the road. He said, how are you? I said, I'm fine, thanks very much. Oh, good, he said. You know, I've only just come out. I said, really? He said, yeah, you had me down for 8. I said, I had you down. He said, really? The armed robbery, he said, down in Southwark, he said, that was my job. He said, I got to hand it to your program. He said, you did it on Police 5. He said, the old Bill were around within 5 minutes. He said, unbelievable, you know. And he said, he couldn't give me your autograph, could you? I said,